Gideon was halfway through tightening a bolt when his hands began to shake. Not violently, not enough for anyone else to notice, just enough for him to feel it. He paused, staring at the metal beneath his fingers, waiting for the trembling to stop. Around him, the workshop hummed with familiar sounds, tools clanking, voices talking, life moving on as usual. Gideon forced his hands steady and finished the job. That was how he handled most things. Notice the problem, ignore it, keep going. Gideon had always been this way. From a young age, he learned that reliability was a kind of currency. If you showed up, people trusted you. If you stayed quiet, people didn't question you. And Gideon liked being trusted. He built his life carefully, steady work, steady marriage, steady faith, the kind of life that looks solid from the outside. People often said, if Gideon is involved, things will be fine. They meant it as praise. He felt it as pressure. The tiredness didn't come all at once. It settled in gradually. At first, it was just a few restless nights, then a constant tightness in his chest, then moments where his thoughts would spiral for no clear reason. He started waking up already exhausted, his mind racing before his feet even touched the floor. But Gideon told himself this was normal. Men were taught to stand in storms, not describe the rain, to carry weight without bending, to swallow pain and call it strength. Men didn't cry, they endured. They pushed through and kept moving. So Gideon stayed quiet. Because in his world, tiredness wasn't something you talked about. It was something you survived. At home, Gideon moved through his routines with practiced ease. Dinner, homework, bills, conversations that stayed on the surface. His wife noticed the silence growing heavier, but Gideon always waved it away. I'm fine, he said. And because he always had been, she believed him. One evening, while washing his hands in the sink, Gideon caught his reflection. The man staring back looked familiar and strange. His eyes were tired in a way sleep hadn't touched. His shoulders sat lower than they used to. He stared a moment longer than usual. Then he turned away. The first real crack came quietly. He was driving home when the road ahead suddenly felt unfamiliar. Not lost, just distant. His heart began to pound, his breath shallow. For a few terrifying seconds, Gideon felt like he was floating outside himself. Cars honked. The light changed. He swallowed hard and drove on. By the time he got home, his hands were steady again. But something inside him wasn't. That night, Gideon didn't sleep. He lay awake, listening to the sounds of the house, the soft breathing of his family, the ticking of the clock. The weight in his chest returned. This time, he didn't push it away. He simply lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering when strength had started to feel like drowning. The days that followed were heavier. Small irritations felt enormous. Noise felt sharp. Silence felt threatening. Prayer became difficult. Not because he didn't believe, but because he didn't know how to explain what he was feeling. So he didn't. One weekday afternoon, Gideon left work early. He didn't tell anyone why. He drove slowly, letting traffic pass him, unsure where he was headed. Eventually, he found himself pulling into the parking lot of his church. The building stood quietly, untouched by urgency. He sat in the car for a long time. Then he went inside. The church was empty. No music, no service. Just rows of chairs and sunlight resting softly on the floor. Gideon sat near the back. He didn't bow his head immediately. He just sat, breathing, letting the stillness settle. He finally let his head fall against the back of the chair. His voice, when it came, was raw, barely above a whisper. God, I don't know how to stop carrying everything. The words trembled through him. He felt the weight of months' years lifting and crushing him all at once. His chest tightened, then loosened slightly, as if God had placed a hand there, steadying him in the silence. Tears stung his eyes. He blinked them back at first, but they came anyway, sliding down silently, carrying exhaustion, fear, and the shame of pretending to be unbreakable. For the first time in a long time, Gideon felt like he could breathe, not all at once, not perfectly, but enough to notice that breathing was possible. He stayed there, hours passing in the quiet, the light from the windows shifting across the empty pews. Each moment, a strange relief settled in a whisper of permission to be human, to be tired, to not have to fix everything. When he finally left, he didn't rush. He walked slowly through the empty church, hands brushing against the polished wood of the pews, as if absorbing the peace lingering in the space. The world outside was still heavy, still demanding, still loud. But something inside him had shifted. A small part of him, the part that had been screaming for attention, had finally been heard. That night at home, he didn't come in with explanations or grand confessions. He simply sat beside his wife, and the words came in fragments. I I didn't realize how heavy I'd let it get. The My chest, it's been tight for so long. I don't know how to rest. She reached out and held his hand. No judgment, no impatience, just quiet, steady support. And for the first time, Gideon let himself cry in front of someone he loved. The kind of crying that wasn't weakness, but release. The kind that cleansed the soul instead of shaming it. In the days that followed, Gideon's life didn't suddenly change. Bills piled up, responsibilities waited, work demanded, the storms were still there. But Gideon had learned something priceless. He could stand in the storm without carrying it alone. He could share the weight without losing himself. He could rest without feeling guilty. He began to notice the small moments, a quiet morning without rushing, a walk without thinking of everything he had to do, laughter shared freely with his family. He began speaking honestly about stress, about fatigue, about fear, and in doing so, he discovered a strange power. Vulnerability was not weakness, it was life. Weeks turned into months, and the shift deepened. Gideon was still the dependable man people trusted, still the one others leaned on, but he had changed, not by magic, not instantly, but by learning to let God in, let people in, and let himself feel. And every day, that choice to pause, to breathe, to be human became a small victory. Strength is not the absence of struggle. Faith is not pretending you're fine. A man does not lose honor by crying, by resting, by admitting he cannot carry everything alone. True strength is standing in the storm, letting it wash over you, and finding the courage to reach out to God, to others, and to yourself. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video. Subscribe for more real, faith-based stories that speak to the heart, and share this with someone. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most.